dropped when we showed up for court based on lack of cause, but she tried to use the filing in one negotiation as blackmail of sorts. After she was having to pay me, the way they were treating our son went from all these toys and over-the-top gifts being taken away. Our son was failing almost all of his classes because he was allowed to play video games all night. I would see him online at 1 a.m. on a school night, and homework was not a thing. But now that they lost in court and manipulating him against me wouldn't work anymore, his phone was taken away, and the TV and PlayStation were taken away. The fridge and bike were sold. And now every little act was a major infraction. According to her, he became this horrible child in her house. He began realizing that he was only treated so well when it mattered for them to use him to get support and to try and control me and hurt me. I wanted more time with the kids, so using the kids against me was hurting me. He also started asking about incidents that had occurred throughout the last few years, telling me what he saw and what he was told, and I would tell him my side and show him evidence of what was actually going on. 2 weeks into summer and the new 50-50 schedule, my son came to me and asked if he could come live with me full time and only see his mom on alternating weekends. The way he was being treated was like a red-headed stepchild, and he was miserable. That same weekend, my ex sent me an email saying that his behavior had risen to a level she could not handle anymore and that it was in his best interest to come live with me more than 50-50. But because it wasn't fair and even she wanted me to give up an equal amount of time with our daughter, I said that he could live with me more, but that this would have no impact on our daughter's time with me. I would continue to have her 50-50. Her reply was that if I would not agree to make things fair, then she would just put up with our son's behavior, even though her words were that it was in his best interest to be with me. Eventually, it came out that she was more worried that I was going to go and ask for support. I agreed to zero support, in the interest of our son, on the condition that she agreed to pay for half of our son's expenses, such as clothing, school supplies, etc., and I was already paying for half of all of our daughter's expenses. The more time my son spent with me, the more he would ask about things. He was in counseling, and we would go over everything. He ended up getting into some legal trouble over some things he had done while at his mom's house. She ended up completely cutting off contact with him, and her boyfriend, now fiancé, insisted that she file for a restraining order against her son, which she did. He had to appear in court and sit across the courtroom while his mother begged the judge for a permanent restraining order. The judge explained that the maximum he could issue was 5 years, and that wasn't warranted, but he did issue one pending the outcome of the juvenile court's decision on the other legal matters. She began bawling and begging for a longer restraining order. She was denied. The support agreement we had fell apart when I sent a couple bills to my ex. One was for an uncovered medical expense and the other was for a pair of shoes. By law, all medical expenses are split 50-50, no matter what. She refused to pay anything. I reminded her about the agreement and the state laws and warned her that if she continued to not pay as was our agreement, I would be forced to go back to court to seek support, as was my right. I did not get a reply. Instead, my stepfather, who I was renting a couple rooms from at the time, got an email from the fiancé in which he said that any further request for money from her, which was taking food out of my daughter's mouth, would be met with serious legal issues both for me and my son. I went to the courts and filed for support the next day. The same day that service was delivered to my ex, a letter was drafted to the district attorney handling my son's case in which the fiancé made claims of unfit parenting and abuse and requested that my son be taken from me immediately and placed full-time in either juvenile detention or a live-in counseling facility. This was largely ignored when my son's attorney presented the threatening email in response to a request for reimbursement of expenses. Since this was all part of my son's legal issues, he had to be included in the conversations and copied on the letters. Part of his legal issues required him to spend a few weekends in juvenile detention. At this point, he had been living with me 100% for almost a year, and between the courtroom antics and the lies and manipulation he now knew about, he really had no desire to see his mother, but the counselor he was seeing was working towards reunification as one of the goals, dealing with his anger with his mother, part of which is what she attributes his legal issues to. The nuptials to the BF fell apart a day or two before the wedding, which they both tried to blame on my son and then on me. Now that the controller was gone,